1 week from today will be the first release of the college football standings. It's interesting. It's different this year because there's 12 teams, so even more teams involved, a lot more explanation. Tomorrow, the president, executive director of the college football playoff, well, Rich Clark, we've had him on a couple of different times. We'll have kind of a Zoom webinar about how things work. We don't know how this is going to work. If this was still 4, I wasn't watching the last few years. Paul, does it interest you in any way?
Only to see. I won't watch the show. I mean, that to me, I'll watch the comments afterwards to see, how difficult it is to answer those questions that I'll have the same answer. This is what this room of people thought, and this is what we voted on. And you're going to ask me for minutia, and I'm going to give you something. But anything I say, you can probably disprove with another thing that we're hoping you don't bring up. But I'll look at it because I'm intrigued on how you create a 12, what early they put value on, which ultimately a month from now they'll have to change their whole position on because 3 of the things they're assuming are never going to happen probably will.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's crazy that our country decided to hold election night on the first night of the CFP rankings.
I know.
Like, what are they thinking? Do we care about the president? I want to see those rankings that don't really mean all that much in the grand scheme of things. What are we talking about here? What a dumb decision. No, in all seriousness, what a weird decision by, I guess, the folks behind the CFP to debut on that night of all nights where I think people are going to be pretty preoccupied. But regardless, I'm slightly more interested in this. Not this edition of it, though. I mean, I'll probably watch more of this first edition than I did any previous first edition since the first year. It has become non-appointment television for me, quite frankly. Listening to a bunch of people just blowhard their way through these rankings that, are, fun debating topic and all of that. But with the 4-team format, it was not really all that fun to discuss. I mean, you can get all excited about that race for 4th. And I know like last year you had Alabama and all that, but it just felt like we were talking about the same 5 teams every single year. Mm-hmm. And no, it wasn't. Like every once in a while, like Washington popped in there or TCU popped in there or whatever, but man, it was just all about Bama and Georgia and Ohio State and Georgia and Ohio State and Michigan. It was the same like 5 teams. So this 12-team playoff does make it more interesting. I don't anticipate that I'm going to watch every second of all these, but at least the first one, I'll be interested to see how they have the 12 teams set up. And do we see BYU and Iowa State, or do you see like BYU getting the minimum amount of respect and then Iowa State not in the polls? And what does that then mean, and what kind of conversation do we then have to have from a Big 12 perspective? Or, from an SEC perspective, like, why do we only have 6 teams in here? Why is Vanderbilt not set? That'll be interesting to see kind of the division of the conference representatives. Is it 5-5 and then everybody else is running for table scraps like we all assume it will be? Or is there a couple of Big 12 and there's a couple ACC and there's, is it more evenly spread than we imagine? So those types of, I guess, starting points I am interested in, but it is very much a whole made-for-TV product and not the most important thing in the world when it comes to making the college football playoff. It's information you can get and digest on your own without all the other fluff with it, but I'm interested to see how they try to explain it, at least initially.
I almost wish that all of those on the committee were in a Zoom box, and when they unveiled the standings, they all could be asked questions. Not one person representing the whole group. I get why, because I'm not sure I'm going to watch just the one person much, but I like the change. Rich Clark, we've had him on a couple of times. I think he means well. Whatever type of leverage or whatever he can do, I don't know. We'll watch how it goes. That is a week from today. And tomorrow he'll have a Zoom meeting to kind of explain quite a bit, because there might still be a couple of things within how they select eventually the final 12 that maybe we don't know enough about. West Virginia head coach Neil Brown, defensive coordinator Jordan Leslie is out. He was a Broyles nominee back-to-back years. currently ranked third worst in the Big 12 in scoring defense. We know it's been a bad year. Is this Neil Brown trying to possibly save his job by making coordinator moves, or do you think it doesn't matter?
I don't think it matters. I think he's got to try to save his job, though. I mean, Ren Baker, being the kind of guy that he is, is not going to tell him, like, no matter what you do. They've got to try and win. And look, if this works, then maybe that helps him. The problem is that they were 9-4 last year. They're not any better this year. The same problems exist is, sure, you can beat teams that you're supposed to beat, but you're not beating anybody. You're not getting better. You're not moving up the ranks of the Big 12. You're just in stasis. And so I don't think that changes. I think the fan base has kind of left Neil Brown. So, best of luck to you. But he was already under fire anyway. This is just maybe the last gasp effort for the last month of the season to see what they can get done. But, yeah, I don't think it matters much because I do think he's going to be out the door.
I'm not sold that he's out the door just yet, although I think it's leaning in that direction. But I think this is just typically what a guy does when he's under fire and under the gun, and I don't think this move saves his job in any way. I think a multitude of things will do that or not do that. This is a necessary move because their defense, particularly their secondary, stinks, and you're trying to be better there and show that you're looking to be better there rather than just a status quo and fans – just being fed the same thing week after week. I think you did need to have a little bit of a shakeup here. But, yeah, I don't think by simply just saying, Jordan Leslie's out, like, my job's safe. I don't think he's under that illusion at all. And I don't think that Ren Baker, if that's the end game in his head, is, going to be satisfied with just throwing him as DC and saying, okay, well, that'll take care of business. So, no, I think it's as much just a necessary move for this football team to try to win games down the stretch. And maybe part of it is, trying to, throw a little bit of a bone. But at this point, man, like, people that want your head, they're not hungry for your coordinators. They want you gone. So they're not flying banners for Jordan Leslie around Morgantown. They're not putting up billboards for your coordinators in Morgantown. They're doing that for you. So
I did see one that said, leave Neil Brown alone.
Well, yeah, I saw Pat McAfee was talking about how just strange it all is. I don't think it's the best look, really, myself, but I know that people reach a certain point and they want to be heard, and West Virginia fans have seemingly been at this point for 3 or 4 years now, and now they're at a point where it's just they've had enough in some cases based on what I've seen. Now, it's not everybody, but it's a lot of people. The heat's on there, and so, this will be something that if it works out and they win 3 or 4 games down the stretch because they made a change on defense, maybe he does save his job. But simply offering it up, that's not going to save anything.
Michael DeHart, Michael DeHart, a West Virginia viewer who does love the Mountaineers, saying that from all the articles I read today, it should, as far as give Neil Brown a little bit of time, as long as they don't flub and lose the last 4. They're 4-4. They can still end up with a pretty decent year, but the expectations obviously were higher. Let me see. If he can get them to a bowl game, he should be fine. That's from Stevie Heisman.
I get that their fans are saying that, but right now,
those are just 2.
Those are just 2. I get
good guys though.
Yeah. But get them to a bowl is 6-6. That's a 3-game regression from a year ago. Or 3, I guess when you include the bowl game, but they were 9-4 a year ago, so that's at least 2 losses less. Cincinnati's good. Baylor's improving. UCF's a mess. Tech is nebulous right now.
Yeah.
But, look, if they go – let's say they go 1-3 in that stretch because they're not playing well right now. He's gone. They are not at this point going to probably be better than they were last year unless they win out. And I don't see that happening.
Michael said, hey, guys, fans are all still pretty upset and angry. We get that. Now, Paul sent this to us. It's a nightmare scenario, according to the title of the email. Clemson, Miami, SMU, Indiana, Oregon, and Penn State all enter November undefeated in conference play. None control their destiny to make the conference title game.
Yeah, they all do. Now, Jack made a...
Not all of them are going to end up undefeated. That never happens. We do this, but usually we do it early in the year. That never is going to happen. But this, who knows? Maybe it can happen.
A lot of times they don't wind up all undefeated, because eventually they've got to play each other, right? Well, now the conferences are so big.
I agree, yeah.
Ne'er the twain shall meet. Now, Jack did one for us on the Big Ten, but not the ACC. His words to me were the ACC was too complicated to put onto a graphic. So this is the Big Ten graphic if you look at it here. So in this three-way tie scenario, you have Indiana, Oregon, and Penn State, all right now undefeated in the conference. Indiana has Michigan State on the road, Michigan at home, Ohio State on the road, and Purdue at home to end the season. Oregon at Michigan, Maryland at Wisconsin, Washington. Ohio State, or Penn State has Ohio State obviously this week, Washington at Purdue, at Minnesota, and Maryland on down the line. So the tiebreakers listed are this, and the one in blue is the one you have to pay attention to, is head-to-head record against all common conference opponents, record against single common conference opponents in descending order. Their common opponents are listed on the graphic as Maryland, Ohio State. You know, you see all those. Those are the common opponents there on the graphic. But number 4, and this is the one that screws Indiana right now. Indiana needs, these guys to pick it up.
No, Indiana needs to keep winning.
Yeah, they need to keep winning. One, but they also need these guys to pick it up down the stretch. The current records of the rest of the common opponents, 8-15 for Indiana, 11-15 for Oregon, and 10-14 for Penn State. So in this scenario, should they all win out, Indiana, in spite of their upstart season, could be undefeated and out of the title game because Penn State and Oregon would have better common opponents record.
The big problem here, and I don't think anyone disagrees with me here, when you have 16 and 17 and whatever, 18 teams in a conference, this probably won't happen, but the chances are there, which the conferences are too big, but that's not going to change.
No, and it's not probably going to happen, but it's more likely to happen more often than it used to.
Because eventually you had like a pyramid. Everyone ends up here at the top, and there's 2 teams they play, right? Yeah. That may not happen this year. And again, you mentioned the Big Ten, but also the ACC has that issue. The Big 12, no matter what, no one's going in undefeated unless they win the Big 12 championship game because 2 undefeated teams might meet. That's if they get to that point in the championship game. Craig? You wonder, they got rid of division, so this opportunity, the scenario could be there.
It's interesting how that could wind up. I don't really have any thoughts on the tiebreakers themselves or any of that, but this is, like you said, it's what you asked for when you expanded to 16 conferences, and if others keep growing, 18 or 20 or whatever some of the ideas out there are, which has been nice to kind of get a break from all that, honestly, the last month or so. But inevitably that conversation gets geared back up in the offseason and start looking down the line at the possibilities. This will just be more commonplace, but I don't think you're worried about it as the Big Ten because, well, what are you mad at, Indiana? You'll still get into the playoff, especially once we bogart our way to having automatic bids. Like, hell, it won't even, like, the conversation prior to the season, if I remember correctly, was why conference championship games don't matter and should we now start getting rid of them. And here will be another feather in the cap of folks, I guess, who feel like that's the best way to go moving forward is to just completely eliminate championship games. Because you know what the idea is now, right? Is to have like 4-team playoffs in every conference at the end of the year. So you'd have K-State playing BYU, and then you'd have Iowa State playing Colorado, and then they play the winners, and then that's the Big 12 champ. That's the new trend, like topic going on when it comes to the college conference championship format.
As you were saying that, Craig, Sir Blah, Blah, Blah could lead to a 4-team conference playoff.
Yeah, I think that's the main reason behind that is not because we as fans would enjoy it. It's because it would be more money. So, again, anything you ever hear with college sports, why would they do this? It's always more money. That's always the answer. It's never the health of the student-athlete. It's never the benefit of the fans. It's never any of that. It's what gives the schools more money. And so what would give the schools more money outside of the expanded college football playoff? The expanded conference championship race. So now you have more conference games, but in the championship format, like I said, potentially you take your top 4. And that way, with these bigger conferences, since in some years Ohio State won't play USC or Michigan doesn't play Oregon or whatever, then you'd get those big juicy matchups in your semifinal rounds.
Yep.
So that's the thing to sort of keep an eye on, especially when you start thinking about the SEC and the extra conference game and kind of what do you throw in the pot for some of these schools as far as like offering up more money. Well, hey, what if we'd give you $20 million more if you guys, do a 4-team conference playoff championship. So that's the thing that's out there floating around.
Well, let's play 20 games in college football.
Well, I mean, that's the part where it starts to get like absurd. Is like, yeah, how many games are we playing here? Because you'd go
Well, right now you have 12 regular season games.
Well, the biggest problem with is the 5th team would like not have to play the conference title games at all, so they're already missing. So like that's the part where you start getting teams who played like 2 or 3 more games than others.
Yep.
And so I don't know how that works out ultimately, but all I do know is that is one of the new trendier things to talk about is the potential conference championship brackets themselves.
Yeah.
So
by the way, speaking of Ohio State and Penn State, James Franklin is 1-8 versus top 5 teams. He's 1-9 against Ohio State. Ryan Day is 2-6 against top 5 teams, and has also has been in the case in all 8 of those games. Now, here's the deal: it's hard to beat top 5 teams. If you go through the history of any program, the alpha of all the blue blood alphas, the country club that doesn't have to have a card to get in or a key, they just kind of like walk right through the door. It's hard to win games against top 5. But 1-8, 1-9 against Ohio State, that gets you. That you got to win some of those games. Osborne couldn't beat Switzer. Finally broke through there, and it also helped that Switzer moved on. Bowden couldn't beat Miami, right? There's certain teams, it's hard to win top 5 games. That's why those records are usually not very good.
Well, and that's why those jobs are the big money jobs, because most other places, people would be totally satisfied with what Ryan Day has done. And, yeah, maybe want to see him beat his rival more than, a couple of years having gone by. But that's the high pressure that comes with those jobs, because 95% of the schools out there would take what Ryan Day's done and be perfectly content. Now, I say that, inevitably you get spoiled, and even if he was doing that, somewhere else that's of lesser stature, inevitably they will want more than just winning 10 games every year or whatever. But at Ohio State, yeah, there's a certain bar to be met, and they haven't won the Natty in a while, and they've had a lot of good teams who have had good opportunities to do so, and they've fallen short of that, and they've watched their rival go and ascend back to the top, and they've watched their rival surpass them. And so, yeah, there's a different kind of unique pressure there that's not like you're not winning games. It's just you're not winning 1 or 2 extra games and winning the top prizes, and that's what's become the big annoyance for Ohio State fans. So that's what comes with that territory.
I don't know this for a fact, but I will put this out there. I'm not so sure if you've played in, let's say, 10 or more games against the top team in the country, the top 5 teams in the country, that nobody has a winning record. Like, nobody. I'm talking about if you've played enough of those games, I doubt that anybody, if they played 10, 20, 30, or even more, has a winning record against somebody inside the top 5 as a program. Now, some coaches might. Let me give you an example. This is from 5 years ago, so there's been a few games played, right? Alabama, all time, is 9-4 against top-ranked teams. But they're 33-40 against top 5 teams. So they're about as close to 500 as you get. Let's go to another team. Give me a big-time team. Alphabetical order if you can. Florida State.
Okay.
No, you said big-time team.
Oklahoma.
There you go.
You know what? Not good this year with you two.
No.
I mean, it's Oklahoma.
I mean, look, it's what happens when you're both not going to make a bowl game.
Oklahoma
Yeah, talk trash.
is 44, 56-2. This is from 5 years ago, and it hadn't gotten any better against teams in the top 5. Let's go to Ohio State, right? 35-41 against teams ranked in the top 5. Let's go to another alpha somewhere here. Texas, 36-45 against the top 5. 5-12 against number 1. That means they've won 5. Not many people have beaten the number 1 team that many times. Let's go to one more that's a pretty big blue blood. Who am I missing? I don't know. I'll put Georgia in this mix. I don't know how many times they've been a part of this. Georgia, 13-37 against the top 5. It is hard to win games against the top 5, but 1-9 for James Franklin, 1-8 against the top 5, 1-9 against Ohio State will not do for, you wouldn't think, much longer. It all depends now in this day and age. You don't think some of the schools like Nebraska, Oklahoma, and others wouldn't like to go 10-2 every year, at least in the regular season, maybe lose to the rival? That's not fun.
I think the James Franklin difference, though, is that he doesn't win anything substantial.
Yeah,
he doesn't win the Big Ten. I mean, Ryan Day at least wins the Big Ten, at least gets into the playoff. Like, Penn State's just good enough to be in the conversation, but not good enough to actually be in the format. And so now they will be. Now they will be in a 12-team playoff. That's what we talked about previously about the changes it brings, is like how many jobs does it save or does it ratchet up the pressure? Because now you have an easier path to the playoff if you're James Franklin than you did prior. So now it should be easier, but now is there more demand? Well, now it is easier. So now you better win a damn playoff game. Like, I don't know, but yeah, James Franklin's not a big game coach based on the last few years, and that is something that hangs around him to a degree that is similar to Ryan Day. But Ryan Day, again, has been there, done that as far as getting to a natty and winning the Big Ten and doing those types of things. So I do think there's a difference between the two. And if you're a Penn State fan, as much as James Franklin might win, like, win something else, though, that just winning a certain total every year, that's cool. But, like, are you beating Michigan and Ohio State when you do that? Or are you, like, skirting them and that's your one loss every year? What is the actual substance of that? And what trophies are you winning? That's a different story for Penn State.
Well, a quick note, without any stories behind it, Paul, how long did it take? Did Bowden get Miami early, or because they both were kind of nobody in the late 70s until he started playing good people? Was there a stretch? Because Osborne was like,
the bigger thing with Miami wasn't that he was losing all the time. It was just that he would get them, but then it would be a year where neither of them were in the title game. Like, they would win it, and then there's somebody better. Ohio State's better, Michigan's better, whatever. Or they'd lose to Florida that year. But it was the ones, the three wide rights in particular, although wide right 3 wound up not meaning anything in the long run because FSU got in over Miami because Miami took a bad loss the first game of that season. But that one wound up not mattering. But the other 2 wide rights, those kicks go in. Bobby Bowden probably has 5 national titles.
Absolutely. There's no question. All right, the Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award goes to A&M quarterback Marcel Reed. He came in the third quarter. Aggies were trailing 17-7. Garrett Ross and his Tigers looked pretty good. It's not like he had big stats, but he played only about the last quarter and a half. 62 yards, 9 carries, 3 touchdowns, a couple of big throws. Came back in a 31-point second half for the A&M football team after Marcel Reed came in to win it 38-23. Congratulations to Marcel Reed of Texas A&M for winning the Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award for this specific week. Now, speaking of Florida State, because, Paul, we have like this stranglehold that we have to bring up the Seminoles more than once every show. Look at this from Brett McMurphy. Look who's on the list. Florida State, TCU, and Baylor in back-to-back years. Michigan State, Arkansas, and Ohio State. These are teams. This is Florida State because of who they are this year, and we're not picking on them, but this is interesting because there's two Big 12 teams here. In the last 15 years, 7 teams had a losing record the following year after they finished the year before inside the top 6.
Yeah, Texas is one of them, so that's technically 3 Big 12 teams because that's it's good company to be in.
Yeah, this is one of those like hyper specific.
Those are some big names. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I dunk on FSU too, and I mean, like, OU can get plenty of that as well. But this is also like one of those hyper specific stats. I feel like it's like I'm waiting for it to say after top 6 finish after eating the chocolate pudding cup. Like to get that specific. So yeah, I mean, that's another stat you can throw out there to throw more gasoline on the fire that's raging in Tallahassee right now, I suppose. But that's also all it kind of really feels like is like, yeah, we know Florida State hasn't followed up the run very well. Like, that's pretty obvious.
I'm shocked, though, that what's happened to them. I mean, just blown away by it.
Yeah, but not really at this point. I mean,
well, no, not now.
Yeah.
But I mean, the first 4 or 5 games of the year,
Sure.
I'm like, good God.
But yeah, I mean, like the thing about that stat though too is, I mean, how many teams, especially when you start getting into the last 3 years, how many teams just reload after runs like that? Especially that aren't Alabama, Georgia, the ones that get the
Ohio
top
State.
5 recruiting classes every single year. Like TCU had an all-time roster. Baylor had an all-time roster. That was their greatest team ever. That was arguably TCU's best team ever, even though they won a title in like the 40s or something, whenever that was, when that was pre-World War II. But anyways, like best modern-day TCU team arguably ever. Maybe some would have an argument about 2014, but there was differences between now and then. And that was the best Florida State team since Jameis Winston, right? Mm-hmm. When they won the national title. So you don't just reload those teams nowadays. Like, those guys aren't all coming back the next year. And a lot of times it's either a bunch of seniors and super laden, or you get picked apart and some of the thread gets pulled and it all unravels. So I think you're seeing it's going to be harder than ever if you're not the same 10 teams, and if it's even 10, because now we're seeing like the Oklahomas and like those don't even look like they can maintain maybe year to year like the way they used to. But Texas, Georgia, Alabama,
Ohio State, like
those are the same teams. But I think besides that, if you go on a playoff run, like not the 12-team, the 4-team playoff run, yeah, odds are TCU's not just running it back the next year and going to just reload after losing 10 guys to the NFL.
Think about this trend. That's 3 years in a row now.
Mm-hmm.
Baylor in 21, then they blanked the bed at the end of the year, went 6 and 7. TCU, number 2, and what happened? And then Florida State just kind of has been in shambles ever since they didn't get picked in the championship game.
Now, Craig, I do agree that the teams you mentioned, it probably won't happen to them like it will to the teams that it's already happened to, the TCU. And let's just take the last 3 years that you're talking about, because anything before this is not transfer portal NIL,
right?
Like collapses and all that, because again, the portal giveth and it taketh away, because you're not necessarily getting these guys. These are hired guns for a year in a lot of cases as well. So now that you have that element, now while I don't think Ohio State and Texas and all them, but I bet you that there will be some great teams that they do have that suffer the same thing, because you have a playoff run, say you have a playoff run year A. In year B, 7 key guys left and went to the draft, but you were able to keep a lot of them to run it back. So then to backfill that, you go and get some one-year assassins, and then those 7 guys and the 12 guys who stayed all leave at once, and then you're screwed in the next year.
Or what happens that you're so good, you make a deep run, might even win it or get 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds deep, and because you're so good, players leave you to go play somewhere else because they don't feel like there's room for them with players that might be coming back or not.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. It's an interesting way to dunk on FSU. It's also something that's happened 3 straight years now, so you wonder if that's just like the way it's going to be for sure. But beyond that, that 2009 Texas team, what happened? They lost Colt McCoy and a bunch of really good players after that, and their quarterback that was the chosen one didn't live up to what he was supposed to be, and they fell on their face that following year and didn't even make a bowl game. So that's going to happen to even, some of the better programs, but I think there's a few that really shouldn't ever fall off that hard, and those are the ones that we already mentioned.
By the way, Dave Aranda put this out just like 40 minutes ago, and I know some people love uniforms and some don't, with that blackout coming out on Saturday night against TCU and the reunion of the 13-14 Big 12 championship teams. Garrett, do you have that?
No, I couldn't get that one.
Oh, okay. Did I send you the wrong tweet?
No, it was with how you had to do the Google Slides today. It didn't.
Oh, okay. Well, he put out the uniform, the anthracite and all of that, which is, we knew it was going to be a blackout. It's a pretty cool uniform. People will love what they're wearing.
I mean, I think the only unique thing about that is actually just that Dave Aranda tweeted, and that's not a joke. The uniform's been out there for days now. It's been known that this is going to be the anthracite uniform. We've known that for a couple weeks. So I think all he did was just simply tweet, which is something that he doesn't do but maybe twice a year. So that's why that's getting a bunch of retweets, is because Dave Aranda or somebody actually took to his account and tweeted that out. But I think that information's already pretty much been out there. So, yeah, if you didn't know already, then even Dave Aranda is encouraging the people going to that game to wear black this weekend.
Michigan's Jack Tuttle is done. He is retiring from football. He had a big announcement last night, 5th concussion, 5th during his football career. I don't know what the minimum wage is on that, but you know they're watching that, or they say they are, a lot more than ever. And this is Jack Tuttle saying, "I'm done." Talked about it, conversations with doctors and family, etc. He is done as a quarterback and playing football for the rest of his life. He has announced his retirement. It's we've seen that a couple of different times now in college football this particular season.
Yeah, I mean, he couldn't play against Michigan State because of a concussion. So we saw that with, who was it last? Grayson McCall, right?
Last week, or
yeah,
earlier, maybe Monday. No, last week, yeah.
Yeah, so anyways, it's part of the deal and a part of the game. And, yeah, he's had a number of concussions, and he's played college football now for 7 years. So you play that long, you're definitely putting yourself out there for risk, and served well as a backup mostly there at Michigan, and they're obviously having their quarterback struggles just in general this year, but good luck to the young man, and didn't work out the way he planned post-Natty as far as his role, or maybe what other people thought as well, but yeah, you got to take care of your health, so good that he's, I guess, hopefully on the forefront of this as opposed to reacting, too late, and this will save him a lot of grief and any further damage, so yeah, unfortunate at career's end, but he's had quite a lengthy one at this point, and hopefully he's good to go in the years that matter remaining.